Hey, we're here in our Monday Night Live studio where we normally do writing sprints and fun things like that, because today we're going to introduce the topic of Preptober and getting ready for NaNoWriMo coming in November. So we're going to switch it up. We're going to do a little bit of a vlog style, and we're going to talk about how do you write a book from beginning to end. And as we start, we're talking about how do you pick a story to write? And that's what this video is about. So every Friday in October, we're going to talk about a different step or a different stage in getting ready to write and then putting words on paper, so to speak, in November. So join us for all of our Fridays, and then on Mondays, we're going to follow that up with the live Write With Me, where we're going to do what we talk about, right?
That's right. We're actually going to do what we talked about in the Friday video, and you can do it with us.
So I hope you enjoy this writing vlog style, and so let's get kicked off here. How do you pick a story to write? You just grab something out of the blue?
Well, you can, but
Okay.
some people do that. But I like to follow a process. And the first thing you need to consider is what genre do you want to write in?
Yeah, that's really true, because maybe you really have to define what genre you want to be in. Maybe it's YA fiction, or maybe it's something else like sci-fi. I like writing in sci-fi a little bit.
You do like writing in sci-fi. There's also contemporary novels, there's historical fiction, there's nonfiction as well.
So the first real barrier or thing you have to achieve is, what genre do you want to write in?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, that's really a question that you really want to refine so that you can figure out what story you want to write.
So after you get past picking your genre that you want to write in, what's the next thing that you got to do to get that story idea?
Well, the next thing you need to do is consider your audience. Because if you write something and there's no audience, or if you have decided you want to, for example, write YA fiction, then you want to have your audience in mind as you're writing. Now, there's a big thing going around in the writing world that says, I just want to write what I'm passionate about, which is great. And I love to write what I'm passionate about. I mean, most writers do.
But it would be really nice if someone wanted to read what I'm passionate about.
Yes! I mean, you spend all this time making something great.
That's great, Ange, but nobody wants to read it.
Yes! You want to find that sweet spot where you are writing something that you can be passionate about, and you're considering your audience so that it gets read.
Now, that may take a little bit of research to
Yes.
figure out where your audience is at, and if there is actually a market for the type of book that you want to write. Maybe we'll get into that in another video, but it is something to consider. Yes, you do want to write what you're passionate about, what you know about, things like that, but you also want to take into consideration, are there people that want to read that? And sometimes what I find is that it's just a minor tweak
Yes.
to reach the right audience. So title, how you approach it, little things like that can make all the difference.
And it can be very genre specific. The other thing with your audience is you want to consider what the audience expectation is. Because once you've defined who your audience is and that you've got a reader for that, what's the expectation of the genre that you've picked?
The next thing that really helps me define what that story is or pick that story is, what message do I want to convey? Do I have something that I really want to get across to my reader? Is there something that is very specific that I'm passionate about that I want to convey? That really helps me. If I write something, it has to have a purpose. Even if I'm writing sci-fi, there's a purpose in what I'm writing. So if I can define that early on, then the whole story kind of takes shape around that purpose or that message that I want to convey. And here's the reality. Everybody does that. If you're reading a successful book or watching a successful movie,
oh, there's a message.
There's a message. Whether you agree with it or not is a different issue. But when you're writing, you have to write with a purpose.
You do. And the next thing you have to do is define what your goals are. What are you trying to do? Are you writing a standalone novel? Are you writing a trilogy? Is it going to be a series? Because you want to keep that in mind as you plan for what you're going to write, what the goal of the writing the story is.
And you can kind of expand that goal idea, and you can say, is my goal just to get a message out there, or to write my memoir, or to get some specific thing out? Or is your goal to sell some books? I think most authors want to write what they're passionate about, but they also want to sell books. And so if you're doing a standalone book, you can make money doing that for sure, but it's easier and better to make more money if you do a series, or you add more books to it, leave it kind of open-ended. We have a couple like that we're going to come back to at some point and add stuff to. So, kind of define that goal. Do you want to make money as well? If you do, then doing some of that market research to figure out who the audience is and how you reach that audience becomes all that more important.
And let me say that writing the book is great, but when you actually sell books and you make money selling your book, it feels pretty good.
It does feel pretty good. So if you're going to sacrifice the time and energy to write the book, get the cover done, invest in editing and all of that, you want to make a little bit of money on the way. Now, if you're like most writers, you already have a list of topics or ideas or things that you wanted to write about. And so if I opened up my little storage folder and showed you, you would see a paragraph about this and a paragraph about that and a story title about this and a book title about that. And that's great. One of the things that we can do is write down all the various ideas that we have to come up with a really good story. You can do brainstorming techniques where you kind of just put it all out there and then you start picking from that. There's different ways that you can go about it. List it, brainstorm it, but getting that out so that you can see those ideas is really helpful.
It is. And then once you have that done, then you want to look at all those ideas and ask yourself, which one of those ideas are you most passionate about?
I'm passionate about the one that I have a message that's going to connect with the audience and going to sell a lot of books and make me famous so I can be... No, I'm just kidding. Kind of, but not really, because really that's what we want to do. We want to pick the story that fits the message and connects with the audience so that we can sell books.
This is true. And the next thing, once you've done all of that, you've answered all of those questions, the next thing you have to answer is, are you a pantser or a plotter?
Now, I thought I was a pantser, but what I determined is really I work well with an outline. If I plot it out a little bit, man, I can flow. But I always had this dream. I'm just going to sit down and write like a pantser.
It just seems so romantic.
It does.
But, I thought I was going to be a pantser when I first started as well. And I really think an outline, hands down, is the way to go. And so once you answer that question, which one are you? That will determine how much prep work you're going to do before you actually start writing.
It really will, because if you're going to outline it and get it ready, then October is really important if you're going to be successful at NaNoWriMo, because you want to work through your outline, get all of your ideas, get your characters, get some of this stuff down and ready to go. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. If you're a pantser, on the other hand, well, just forget it. On November 1st, you wake up and you say, I'm going to write a story, and you go for it. So there's two different ways to approach it. But for us, we are definitely going to be working with outline, character development, getting the things in place so when we start writing, we know where we're going and there's structure, and that really helps me.
And even if you think you are a pantser, or you know that you're a pantser, you can also learn something from having some forward thinking on your project. So I would encourage you, don't tune out if you're a pantser, because there's a lot that you can learn on this topic.
Yeah, especially when we start talking about characters, because pantsers still have to think about their character. Are they
Yes.
well developed?
Yes.
So yeah, don't just turn us off. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Don't disconnect yet. Okay, and so once we get some of these basic things down and make the decision, and we're going to write this type of a story, or this is the story idea, what do we do next?
Well, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to look at, you've got the story, and ask this question. What world does this story take place in? What time? What environment? What's the world that it takes place in?
Yeah, and you can do that with a sentence or a paragraph. You can just jot some quick notes about that. Don't go into world building mode because people get lost in world building mode, and that can really derail you, especially at this early stage. But you do want to have some thought about what is that world look like? Is it like 2024 in America? Or is it like 1920s? Or is it like 100 years into the future? Ooh, I like that.
Well, in keeping in mind that we are talking about NaNoWriMo and Preptober, keep in mind that your world building is going to be very succinct. You do not need to know all the details because we are going to take a week on this, and you are not going to build a huge world in a week.
No, you're not. So, but once you get that idea down, then you can look at kind of the overall story, the plots, the subplots, those key points that you want to hit. I mean, this is where we really start thinking about the hook and how we hook people in, that first line, that first paragraph, that first page, as well as where the story is going to go. So you're not going to get all of that down yet, but you do want to start giving thought to your main plots, your subplots, and some of those details.
Now, in future Friday videos, we're going to go into more depth about the outlining process. But for right now, what you want to keep in mind is write down a couple of sentences and start ruminating on the key points of the main plot, the subplots. Ruminate on all that and write a couple sentences about each one of them.
Yeah, that's a great idea because we are going to go more in depth on it. But all you really want to do is get the rough ideas in your head at this point. So it kind of helps you start formatting things as you move forward.
Yes.
So then we have some exciting stuff. Who is your protagonist? Who is your antagonist? Do you have those character ideas in place, who they might be?
But we're not doing a character sketch yet.
No, because that's another video. We're going to do that, I think, in the next one.
Yes. So at this point, what you want to kind of do is kind of get an idea of, do I know just a basic who my protagonist is, who my antagonist is, but not all the details.
Yeah, once you get the basics down, then we'll get more in depth in a future video. Once you have your protagonist, your antagonist ideas kind of roughed in a little bit, again, not too much, but then you want to look at who are the other characters that are going to come into play in your story. And as you develop that, just write down basic information. Maybe you have a name or maybe you have an idea of a particular character that you want to put in there. And how many characters do you want to have that's going to interact with this?
Now, keep in mind, if you have too many characters,
it becomes complex.
It makes the story much more complex and it'll be much harder to write.
But on the other hand, if you don't have enough characters, it can make it flat, and then you're going to have a harder time with subplots.
Yes.
So you want to find that sweet spot where there's enough characters, but not too many characters.
Yes.
And at this stage, you can always add more later or cross somebody out. Just a rough idea of how many other characters are going to be supporting your protagonist, your antagonist, or in the story in general.
Yes. And then the next thing you want to do is, now that you've done all of that prep work, what you're going to do is you're going to answer the 5 W's.
But wait, could I just pick up my coffee mug and go, man, there's a cool dinosaur on there. I want to write a dinosaur book.
Well, go for it.
I mean, sometimes stories hit us like that, right? It's an inspired little idea that we have and we can run with it.
Yeah, this is true.
Okay, forget the dinosaur book. Go ahead with your 5 W's.
I know of a dinosaur book that was a very successful book, so you should go for it. Anyway,
There's actually a series that got turned into movies.
this whole point is to think about the 5 W's because that's what you want to answer with this step. Who, what, where, when, why.
Because the T-Rex was hungry, that's why. I mean, really, you got to have some fun with your story process. So, yeah, I like to mix it up a little bit and have some fun.
Be sure to tune in on Monday night where we're going to go live and we are actually going to share with you as we actually go through this process of answering those 5 W's and getting ready for NaNoWriMo.
And if you have questions or want to communicate or chat, then we do stop and interact and have fun on our live events. So join us for that, and maybe you can straighten me out on my dinosaur idea. Who knows? So we would love to have you join us, and we will see you Monday night.